That night, she was writing in her diary, hidden away in the library while the castle slept. She never imagined she would be discovered, much less by the Alpha King himself. In her rush to flee, she left behind the worst mistake possible. The diary where she had written truths no one should ever read, especially him. Insults toward the kingdom, dangerous secrets, and mortifying confessions about the king being wonderfully irresistible. Now, consumed by shame, she hid and avoided being seen by the king, uncertain whether he had read it, or whether he was simply waiting for the right moment to confront her. The candle flickered atop the dark oak table, casting dancing shadows across shelves crammed with ancient books. Fair dipped her quill into the inkwell, hesitated for a second, then began to write with the restrained fury of someone burdened by too many secrets. Today I witnessed yet another episode of the fascinating play I call How to Destroy a Kingdom, by Theron, the devoted uncle. She pressed the quill harder than necessary, leaving dark blots on the page. Her jaw was tight, her fingers gripping the instrument as if it were a weapon, because that was exactly how it felt to write in that diary, armed with the only thing she possessed, the brutal truth no one else seemed willing to see. I managed to overhear Theron suggesting that taxes in the southern villages be raised temporarily to strengthen the defenses. Our dear king frowned. Will he finally question it today? Will he ask why the strengthened defenses are still the same 3 mold-ridden towers? Fair stopped and closed her eyes. She could see the scene from hours earlier with perfect clarity, herself hidden behind the columns of the main corridor, watching Alpha King Rurik and his uncle speak. She saw the king's expression, that momentary hesitation before he gave in. He always gave in. She continued writing, the words flowing with sharp sarcasm. The answer, no. From the resigned look I saw when they left, he gave in. Again. How? How is it possible to be so blind? The man has wolf eyes that can see in the dark, yet he cannot see the traitor standing right in front of him. Fair took a deep breath, trying to rein in the frustration burning in her chest like live embers. She had always been like this, unable to pretend she did not see, incapable of simply accepting things as they were. Since childhood, when she first began exploring every corner of the castle, she had developed that irritating habit of observing, questioning, recording. Her father, a loyal and honest royal guard, always warned her, "Fair, you cannot wander around alone like that. It is not safe, it is not appropriate." But she was stubborn. She kept visiting the kitchens, where the cooks grumbled about supplies that never arrived. The stables, where grooms murmured about promised equipment that never appeared. And especially the nearby villages, where she bought fruit and spoke with workers who trusted her in a way they would never trust anyone from the court. Because Fair was not of the court. She was merely a guard's daughter, raised without a mother from birth. Her mother had died in childbirth, leaving behind only a baby and a man shattered by grief who had to learn to be both father and mother at once. She grew up free in the castle corridors, without a lady's formal education, without the social restraints that imprisoned noblewomen. And perhaps that was exactly what had made her so observant. She saw the kingdom through the eyes of someone who did not fully belong to it. "Theron practically has gold coins drawn in his eyes," she wrote with barely contained rage. "The man smiles when he speaks of necessary sacrifices, as if he were discussing tonight's banquet, and not the hunger of entire families." She remembered Mistress Marta, whom she had met in the village that afternoon. The woman, with her wrinkled face and calloused hands, had said in a weary voice, "The promised grain vanished, girl, simply evaporated." Today in the village, Mistress Marta told me the promised grain disappeared, evaporated. Meanwhile, I saw 3 wagons leaving Theron's warehouse. Full. Where to? What a mystery. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote, not from fear, but from helpless fury. Because who was she to accuse anyone? Who would believe a guard's daughter over the king's uncle, his trusted advisor? Sometimes I want to shake Rurik and scream, Wake up! But who am I? Just Fair. Just Fair. The girl with no mother, with no position, with no voice. She sighed and turned the page. And then, as always happened when she let her guard down, her thoughts drifted into dangerous territory. Forbidden. She began to write more slowly, the words heavy with a shameful confession she would never admit out loud. I saw the king training today, both in human form and as a wolf. Her face flushed instantly. She should not have been there. Royal training sessions were not public. They took place in a secluded courtyard guarded by sentinels. But Fair knew every secret passage in the castle, every forgotten window, every hidden angle. She had found a place from which she could watch unseen, behind a tall column overgrown with vines, on the second floor of an abandoned side tower. In human form, he is impressive, she wrote, biting her lip. Tall, broad-shouldered, strong arms flexing with every sword movement. His chest is, how embarrassing to write this, but it is perfectly defined, visible through the sweat-soaked training clothes clinging to him. She closed her eyes, and the image rose vividly in her mind. Rurik training beneath the afternoon sun, his abdominal muscles contracting with every strike, sweat trailing down the side of his neck. The way he moved, with that lethal grace only true alphas possessed, power and control in every gesture. And then he had transformed. Fair felt a shiver run down her spine just remembering. She wrote quickly, as if she needed to expel the memory before it consumed her. And then he transformed. The transformation is... I have no words. His body twists, expands, and within seconds there is a massive black wolf where the man once stood. A truly alpha wolf. Black as the darkest night, larger than any normal wolf. Golden eyes gleaming with intelligence and power even in animal form. She remembered holding her breath at that moment, her hands gripping the cold stone of the column to steady herself, because the sight was terrifying and fascinating at the same time. Watching a man become a beast, watching the creature emerge without losing the essence of who he was. He trained as a wolf for nearly an hour. The strength, the speed, the brutal grace. It is terrifying and fascinating all at once. Fair stopped writing. Her hands were trembling again, but now for entirely different reasons, because she had to confess the most shameful part, the part that haunted her on silent nights. She took a deep breath and continued. When he finished, he transformed back, and I should have looked away. I should have left. But I was frozen. She could feel heat rising up her neck, staining her cheeks. But she had to write. She had to release this confession that was devouring her. After the transformation, he is naked. Completely. Her heart raced, just remembering. I saw a guard hurry forward with a heavy cloak to cover him, but for a few seconds that felt like eternity, I saw his entire body. The broad, muscular back still slick with sweat from training, the line of his spine, strong legs, everything. Every inch of bronze skin, every defined muscle. The battle marks, old scars telling stories I will never know. Fair squeezed her eyes shut, shame burning in her chest like fire. Because she had stayed there, hidden, watching something she should never have seen. Etching every detail into her memory like a thief, stealing something precious. The guard wrapped the cloak around his shoulders, and I finally managed to breathe. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I slipped away before anyone discovered me there, watching something I should not. But the image, his image is burned into my mind. How can he be like that, so submissive and spoiled when he sits on the throne, and still be irresistibly beautiful as both man and wolf, both clothed and... She stopped, breathed, continued in smaller letters, almost ashamed. Stop, Fair, just stop. But she could not stop. Because there was something worse than physical desire. Something deeper and more frightening. I am an idiot. A complete idiot. I stood there like a fool, watching every muscle move during the transformation. Every detail of his body I should never have seen, imagining things I should not. And then the most dangerous confession of all. And when he becomes a wolf, something in me, my own wolf, wants to approach, wants to touch that black fur, wants to run beside him. Fair clenched the quill so tightly she nearly snapped it. Because that was the worst part. The most humiliating. The most infuriating. Her inner wolf, that instinctive animal part all shapeshifters possessed, reacted to Rurik in a way she could not control. Whenever she saw him from afar, even when her rational mind harshly criticized him as weak and easily manipulated, her wolf whimpered softly. A strange restlessness, a desire to draw closer, to run beside that immense black wolf. And she hated it, hated that her body betrayed her mind. Hated that something so primitive within her recognized something in him that her reason refused to accept. It is infuriating, she wrote angrily. I despise him mentally, but my wolf will not stop howling for him. Stop it, Fair. He is the king. He would never notice someone like you. And if he discovered that you spy on him like this, you would be expelled from the castle. Or worse. She turned the page violently, as if she could turn her tangled thoughts with it. And then she wrote her most secret fantasy, the one that visited her on lonely nights, when she allowed her mind to wander down forbidden paths. If I were queen, I would do things differently. The words flowed more softly now, heavy with melancholy sadness. I would visit the villages personally. I would listen to the people. I would not let men like Theron manipulate every decision. I would use all that strength he wastes on training to truly protect the kingdom, not merely to look impressive while fighting. Fair stopped, staring at what she had written. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. If I were queen, as if that were possible, as if a girl without a mother, without lineage, with nothing but sharp observations and foolish dreams could ever be queen. She closed the diary with a weary sigh, tucking it beneath her blouse before snuffing out the candle. The library sank into darkness, lit only by silvery moonlight filtering through the tall windows. It was time to return to her modest quarters. Time to lock away these dangerous confessions and go back to being just Fair, the guard's daughter, the invisible young woman wandering the castle, seeing things no one else saw. She was nearly at the door when she heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Steady. Approaching. Fair's heart leapt into her throat. Damn it. No one was supposed to be in the library at that hour. She always came late precisely to avoid encounters. She looked around desperately, searching for an exit, a hiding place, anything. But it was too late. The door opened, and there, filling the doorway completely, stood him. Rurik, the Alpha King himself. Fair felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. He was even more imposing up close. Tall, so tall she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Broad shoulders blocking the corridor light, casting an almost intimidating silhouette. His presence filled the space, drawing the air out of it, making the library suddenly feel smaller. His eyes, gray in the dim light, though she knew they could flare gold at any moment, found her immediately. Surprise crossed his face. I did not expect to find anyone here, he said, his deep voice reverberating off the silent walls. Fair froze. Her inner wolf stirred instantly, that familiar restlessness crawling up her spine. No, not now. Please, not now. But her body would not obey. She felt her heart pounding violently against her ribs. Her hands still clutching the diary began to sweat. Her legs felt like water. And worse, much worse, her wolf was practically singing inside her. Recognition. Attraction. that silent howl she always fought to ignore now echoing through her chest with renewed force. Because he was there. Only a few steps away. So close she could smell him. Cedarwood, leather, and something wilder, more primal. Alpha scent. Her voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. She cleared her throat. Your Majesty, I was just reading. Why did her voice have to tremble like that? Why were her legs unsteady? Get a grip, Fair. He is just a man. A spoiled, manipulated man you despise completely. But her wolf disagreed. Her wolf wanted to step closer. Wanted to stop. Rurik tilted his head slightly, studying her with those keen eyes. And Fairy realized, with rising horror, that he could likely hear her racing heartbeat, smell her nervousness in her sweat. A wolf's sharpened senses missed nothing, especially not an alpha's. At this hour? He asked, taking a step into the library. Fair retreated instinctively. Not out of fear. It had never been fear. But because his proximity made her body react in ways her mind wholly disapproved of. I like to read at night, she managed, forcing steadiness into her voice. When it is quiet. He stopped, seeming to realize he was intimidating her. His expression softened slightly. For a moment, there was only silence between them, heavy, charged with something Farah could not name. And then Rurik did something unexpected. He smiled. Small, almost imperceptible, but genuine. So do I, he said simply. I have not slept in days. I thought walking through the castle might help. I saw the candlelight, and he hesitated, running a hand through his dark hair in a gesture that looked tired. I am sorry if I startled you. Fair blinked. He is apologizing. The king is apologizing to me? Something tightened in her chest, because he looked different. Not the distant king she saw from afar, always surrounded by advisors, always wearing that mask of controlled authority, but just a man. Tired, worried, vulnerable. And that was dangerous. Because it was easier to despise him when he was merely a distant figure. Much harder when he was standing there, so close, so real. You did not startle me, she lied, still pressing the diary to her chest. I simply did not expect to see anyone. What were you reading? He asked, moving toward the shelves with measured steps, as if trying not to frighten her further. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Just old stories, she improvised quickly. About the first alphas, nothing very interesting. Rurik picked up a random book, flipping through the pages without really reading them. He seemed nervous? No, not nervous, but definitely uncomfortable. You like history? I like understanding how things work, Faye answered honestly. Why things happened the way they did. Sometimes the past explains the present. He looked at her then, truly looked at her. And Fair felt the weight of his gaze like something physical, as if he were trying to decipher something within her. A wise observation, he said softly. Silence fell again, but this time it was different, less tense, more comfortable. Almost. Rurik sighed and leaned against the shelf. Moonlight cut across his face at sharp angles, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, his full lips. Fair forced herself to look away. I have not slept in 3 nights, he confessed suddenly, his voice heavy with a weariness that felt more emotional than physical. The kingdom is... There are things happening that I cannot fully understand. Farah watched him, surprised by his honesty. Kings did not confess weakness, especially not to someone like her. My uncle, Rurik continued, looking down at his own hands as if searching for answers there. Theron. He has been my closest advisor since my father died, but lately, something is wrong. He makes decisions, influences things, acts as if... He stopped, jaw tightening, as if he were the king. Finally. Fair had to bite her tongue to keep from saying it aloud. Finally, you are seeing it. But she remained silent, letting him go on. Sometimes I think I am losing my mind. Rurik laughed without humor, questioning the one man who has always been by my side, who helped me rule when I was too young to know what I was doing. But he lifted his eyes to meet hers, and Fair saw something there that surprised her. Doubt, confusion, and perhaps fear. But you feel that something is wrong, she finished softly. He nodded, seeming relieved that someone understood. Yes, exactly. And then, before Farah could process what she was doing, the word slipped out. Trust that feeling. Rurik stared at her. What? Your instincts, she said, choosing her words carefully. Alphas have them for a reason. If something feels wrong, it probably is. She could see the struggle on his face. The desire to believe her warring with years of manipulation, years of blindly trusting Theron. It is complicated, he said at last. It always is, Farah replied. They held each other's gaze for a long moment, and something passed between them, a silent understanding, a connection Fair could not explain, but could feel pulsing in the air like a living thing. That was when it happened. Rurik took a step toward her, and the breeze from the open window carried Farah's scent straight to him. Wild jasmine. Sweet, but not cloying. And something deeper. Something unique, intoxicating, entirely hers. Rurik stopped short, his eyes widening slightly. Fair saw him inhale more deeply, almost unconsciously, as if that scent had hooked something inside him. And then she saw it. His eyes flared. For just a second, perhaps less, but she saw it. Gold. Intense. Wild. His wolf stirred. Rurik shut his eyes tightly, jaw tensing. When he opened them again, they were normal. Gray, controlled. But Fair had seen it, and her own wolf answered. A silent howl of recognition echoed in her chest, sending her heart racing even faster. No. No. Rurik cleared his throat, looking genuinely confused. I should go. But he did not move. He stood there, watching her as if trying to solve an impossible riddle. Panic rose in Fair's chest, because he was feeling it. She could see it in the way he studied her, in the tension in his shoulders, in the way his hands clenched into fists as if fighting some impulse. He is feeling the same thing I am. Or something close to it. What is your name? He asked suddenly. Fair, she answered automatically, still processing what had just happened. Fair, he repeated, as if testing the name on his tongue. And God's, the way he said it, low, rough, almost intimate, made something twist in her stomach. Daughter of Guard Marcus, she added quickly, reminding him of the distance between them. I grew up here in the castle. Rurik nodded slowly, but his eyes never left her, as if he were memorizing every detail. The curve of her face, the color of her eyes, the way her hair fell over her shoulders. I should return to my quarters, Fair said, taking a step back. She needed to leave, needed distance before she did something foolish, like admitting she had watched him naked, or that her wolf was practically begging to go to him. Of course, Rurik agreed, though there was reluctance in his voice. Forgive the intrusion. Fair nodded and walked quickly toward the door. She had to pass him. The space was too narrow to avoid it. And when she did, so close she nearly brushed his arm. The scent of cedar and leather enveloped her completely. Her wolf howled, loud, insistent. Be quiet, she ordered mentally with all the strength she had. Good night, Your Majesty, she said without looking back, quickening her pace. Good night, Fair. The way he said her name again, laden with something she could not identify, made her want to run. And that was exactly what she did as soon as she turned the corner. Rurik remained standing in the library for long minutes after she left. His heart still hammered unevenly. His hands still trembled faintly. What was that? His wolf was restless. Not in the furious way of sensing a threat. Not in the excited way of a hunt. But something entirely different. Something he had never felt before. An intense unease. A magnetic pull. An insistent, curious whisper. Her. Pay attention to her. There is something important about her. Rurik ran a hand over his face, confused. Why her? Why now? He had never noticed Feyre before, and he was certain that if he had ever seen that beautiful young woman wandering the castle, he would have remembered. But his wolf had recognized her somehow. It was not the absolute certainty of a confirmed bond. Not that instinctive roar of my mate the stories described. It was subtler, more confusing. A powerful attraction, yes, but also a consuming curiosity. A need to know more, to understand what that strange feeling was that had seized him the moment her scent reached him. Wild jasmine. He would never forget that scent. Rurik was about to leave when his foot brushed against something on the floor. He bent down and picked it up. A diary, small, with a worn brown leather cover. And there, almost imperceptibly small in the corner of the cover, written in delicate script, fair. She had forgotten it. Rurik locked the door to his chambers carefully, the muted sound echoing through the heavy silence of the early morning hours. He lit candles around the work table, creating circles of golden light that barely managed to pierce the darkness of the room. The diary rested in his hands. Small. Worn. It should not have been there. The voice of conscience rang clearly in his mind. This was a violation of someone's trust. Wrong on every possible level. But that impulse, that need hammering relentlessly ever since her scent had reached him, ever since his wolf had awakened in that consuming way, would not leave him alone. Learn more about her. Understand. She is important. Rurik took a deep breath and opened the first page. The handwriting was delicate yet firm, the letters shaped with evident care. He began to read. Today I witnessed yet another episode of the fascinating play I call How to Destroy a Kingdom by Theron, the devoted uncle. Rurik frowned immediately. The tone was sarcastic, sharp, almost cruel in its honesty. He continued, his eyes devouring the words. I managed to overhear Theron suggesting that taxes in the southern villages be raised temporarily to strengthen the defenses. Our dear king frowns. Will he finally question it today? Will he ask why the strengthened defenses are still the same 3 moldy towers? He remembered that conversation perfectly. It had been exactly that day, in the council hall. Theron had presented the figures, the seemingly solid justifications. And yes, Rurik had frowned, questioning inwardly. But how did she know? From where had she observed? The answer, no. From the resigned expression I saw when they left, he gave in. Again. The words struck him like physical blows. Resigned. Was that what his expression looked like? Defeat? How? How is it possible to be so blind? The man has wolf eyes that can see in the dark, yet he cannot see the traitor standing right in front of him. Traitor. Rurik stopped, read the word again, then read it once more. She had not used questionable advisor or concerning influence. She had not softened it with political euphemisms. Traitor, direct, brutal, unfiltered. His chest tightened, because deep down where he did not admit it even to himself, he knew. He had always known. But it was easier to ignore, easier to trust blindly, easier to be the puppet king who... Puppet. Was that what she thought of him? He kept reading, almost afraid of what he would find. Theron practically has gold coins drawn in his eyes. The man smiles when he speaks of necessary sacrifices, as if he were discussing tonight's banquet and not the hunger of entire families. Rurik tried to remember. Did Theron smile during those discussions? Did he really smile? And he realized, with growing discomfort, that yes, he did. He always had that satisfied expression, that gleam in his eyes when they rearranged resources. How had he never noticed what that truly meant? He turned the page with fingers that trembled slightly. Today, in the village, Mistress Marta told me the promised grain vanished, evaporated. Meanwhile, I saw 3 wagons leaving Theron's warehouse. Full. Where to? What a mystery. The air left Rurik's lungs as if he had been punched. Grain, village, wagons, Theron's warehouse. These were not vague accusations. They were specific, concrete, with names of real people and exact locations. He had approved the shipment of grain to the southern villages 3 weeks earlier, a generous amount to help with the poor harvest. Theron had personally supervised the distribution, assuring him everything would be delivered properly. If the grain had not arrived, if it was being diverted, how long has this been happening? The question echoed in his mind, bringing with it a wave of nausea. How many other distributions had Theron overseen? How many resources had vanished right under his nose? Sometimes I want to shake Rurik and scream, "Wake up!" But who am I? Just fair. Rurik closed his eyes for a moment, something aching deeply in his chest. Just fair. As if she had no worth. As if her brilliant observations, her sharp intelligence, her courage to see what no one else saw, or refused to see, meant nothing. She had seen everything, written it all down. Alone, without power, without a voice, she had done the work that he, the king, should have done. P.S. Theron was wearing a new ring, solid gold with rubies, remarkable thrift for an advisor. Rurik remembered the ring. Large, ostentatious, impossible to ignore. Theron had said it was a family heirloom, a treasure kept for generations that he had finally decided to wear. But if he had bought it with diverted funds? Anger began to simmer slowly in Rurik's veins. Not the hot explosion of rage, but something colder, deadlier, controlled. He kept turning pages, absorbing every word as if it were water in the desert. Detailed conversations Fair had had in the villages, names of workers who trusted her with their complaints, precise records of promised supplies that never arrived, equipment that disappeared, money that evaporated, dates, locations, testimonies. She had assembled, without realizing it, a complete case against Theron. Evidence Rurik should use. But then the handwriting changed. It became more hurried, the letters less careful. Nervous, as if written in haste or under uncontrolled emotion. Rurik turned the page, his heart accelerating without knowing why. I saw the king training today, both in human form and as a wolf. Everything inside him stopped. Completely. His heart, his breathing. Even his wolf went utterly still. She watched him. Secretly. I should not have been there. Royal training sessions are not public, but I found a hidden place from which I can observe without being seen. Rurik should have felt invaded, violated somehow. The training sessions were private precisely to avoid prying eyes, judgment, vulnerability. But all he felt was that strange warmth spreading through his chest. She watches me. Why did that matter so much? He forced himself to keep reading, even knowing he should stop. That he was crossing a line he could not undo. In human form, he is impressive. Rurik's face heated instantly. He could feel the warmth climbing up his neck, coloring his cheeks. Stop. Close the diary now. But his eyes were already on the next line. Tall, broad shoulders, strong arms flexing with every sword movement. His chest is... How embarrassing to write this, but it is perfectly defined, visible through the training clothes clinging to him with sweat. His wolf rumbled softly. Not a threat. Something entirely different. A deep, primal satisfaction. She notices. She pays attention. She sees me. Without realizing it, he was already smiling. Rurik could not stop reading now. It was like being under a spell. A truly alpha wolf, black as the darkest night, larger than any normal wolf. Golden eyes gleaming with intelligence and power even in animal form. Something in his chest expanded as he read those words. The way she described him, with admiration mixed with something that felt almost like spiritual reverence. He trained as a wolf for nearly an hour. The strength, the speed, the brutal grace, it is terrifying and fascinating at the same time. Rurik turned the page, his hands now visibly shaking, and stopped. The next entry began differently. The words were more spaced out, hesitant, as if she had struggled with herself over whether to write or not. When he finished, he transformed back, and I should have looked away. I should have left. But I was frozen. His heart began to pound violently. He knew what was coming. After transforming back, he was naked for a few seconds, never more than that, until a guard brought the heavy cloak to cover him. She saw. After the transformation, he is naked. Completely. Rurik squeezed his eyes shut, trying to process it. She had been there, hidden, watching, and she had seen. He opened his eyes, continued, unable to stop even though he wanted to. I saw a guard hurry forward with a heavy cloak to cover him, but for a few seconds that felt like eternity, I could see. His breathing was rapid now. Uneven. The room felt hotter, the air heavier. He should have felt violated, invaded. Furious, perhaps. But all he felt was that consuming heat, that growing need to know exactly what she had thought, how she had reacted, what she had felt seeing him like that. Completely exposed, vulnerable. His entire body. The broad, muscular back still slick with sweat from training, the line of his spine, strong legs, everything. Everything. She had seen everything. Every inch, every detail. Every inch of bronzed skin, every defined muscle, the battle marks, old scars that tell stories I will never know. Rurik unconsciously ran his fingers over the wide scar on his right shoulder, the largest one, from a battle 3 years earlier against northern invaders. She had noticed even the scars. She had paid attention to every detail. The guard wrapped the cloak around his shoulders, and I finally managed to breathe. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. He could picture it perfectly now. Fair hidden somewhere above, watching, heart racing, hands trembling, struggling to control her breathing, exactly as she had been in the library when he approached her. I slipped away before anyone discovered me there, watching something I should not. But the image of him is burned into my mind, burned into her mind, just as the image of her, nervous, beautiful, dark eyes meeting his in the library without retreat, was burned into his. Rurik turned the page, completely lost now. He had forgotten he was invading privacy, forgotten that he should stop. He could only read, absorb, feel. How can he be like that, so submissive and spoiled when he is on the throne, and still be irresistibly beautiful both as a man and as a wolf, both clothed and submissive, spoiled? The words should have hurt, should have offended, provoked anger, but he could not bring himself to care. Because she had also called him something else. Irresistibly beautiful, not handsome, not attractive. Irresistible. As if she could not help it. As if she had fought it and lost. Stop, Fair, just stop. Rurik could feel her struggle in those short words. The war between desire and reason. Between what she felt and what she believed she should feel. Exactly as he had fought in the library. exactly as he was fighting now. He turned the page with fingers that could barely hold the diary. I am an idiot. A complete idiot. No, Rurik thought with an intensity that surprised him. You are not. You never were. I stood there like a fool watching every muscle move during the transformation, every detail of his body I should never have seen, imagining things I should not. The air caught in his lungs, imagining things. The heat that surged through his body was so intense that Rurik had to lean back in the chair, closing his eyes for a moment. She imagined things with him. His wolf growled, low, possessive, fully awake now. Mine, the wolf whispered with growing conviction. She thinks of me, desires me. She is mine. Rurik opened his eyes, breathing deeply to control his body's reaction. But it was useless. Every word made her more real, more present, more necessary. He forced himself to continue, even knowing that every line pulled him deeper. And when he becomes a wolf, something in me, my own wolf, wants to approach, wants to touch that black fur, wants to run beside him. Everything stopped. Completely. The world. Time. His breath. Rurik reread the line, then reread it again, and again. My own wolf. Her wolf. Wanted to approach, to touch, to run beside his. This is it. This is exactly what my wolf feels for her. Understanding struck him like lightning, because it was precisely what his wolf had felt when he smelled her in the library. That consuming need to draw closer, to protect, to keep near, to run together beneath the moon. We both feel it. Both wolves recognize something, but she was fighting it too. It is infuriating, the entry continued, the words almost angry. I despise him mentally, but my wolf will not stop howling for him. Rurik almost laughed. A sound without real humor, but full and profound understanding. Because it was exactly what was happening to him now. His rational mind tried to say she was just a guard's daughter, no one of important lineage, no one the council would accept, no one who should matter this much. But his wolf disagreed. Violently. Completely. Stop, Fair. He is the king. He would never notice someone like you. And if he discovered that you spy on him like this, you would be expelled from the castle, or worse. Pain. Real pain pierced Rurik's chest as he read that. He would never notice someone like you. She truly believed that she was invisible, that she did not deserve attention, that he, a man who had spent years rejecting the most beautiful noble women without feeling anything, would never see her. But he already did. How he saw her. There was one more entry. Rurik turned the page almost afraid of what he would find. If I were queen, I would do things differently. His heart stopped completely. If I were queen, I would visit the villages personally. I would listen to the people. I would not let men like Theron manipulate every decision. She would be a better queen than he was a king. The truth was crystalline, undeniable. I would use all that strength he wastes solely on training to truly protect the kingdom, not merely to look impressive while fighting. Wasted strength. The words cut deep because they were brutal and inescapable truth. He trained every day, kept himself strong, fast, lethal. But for what? To impress at occasional tournaments? To maintain appearances of power? When was the last time he had truly used that strength to protect someone? To defend something beyond his own pride? Rurik closed the diary with excessive care, his hands visibly trembling. He sat in absolute silence for long minutes, perhaps hours, he no longer knew, simply holding the small diary as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. That diary had not only revealed secrets, it had revealed an extraordinary woman, intelligent enough to see what the entire polished court ignored or pretended not to see. Brave enough to record dangerous truths that could destroy her if discovered. Passionately devoted to the kingdom in a visceral, real way he had never seen in any noble of pure lineage, and who, despite criticizing him with deserved brutality, also desired him, fought against the same inexplicable recognition he felt. Rurik rose slowly, walking to the window with uncertain steps. The moon was full and high, bathing the kingdom in cold, silvery light. His wolf was no longer merely restless or curious. It was convinced, more certain with every passing second. It was not yet the absolute certainty of a fully confirmed soul bond, the instant and unshakable recognition described in the ancient stories. But it was the beginning of something inevitable. Something his wolf recognized even as his mind still struggled to process it fully. And now he had more than inexplicable, consuming attraction. He had real information. Concrete clues about Theron, about systematic embezzlement, calculated manipulation, treason, unfolding right beneath his nose. Fair had not slept at all. She had spent the entire night tossing in the narrow bed, panic growing with every torturous hour that passed without answers. The diary. Where did I drop it? When the sun finally rose, bringing light but no relief, she got up with deep, dark circles under her eyes and hands trembling uncontrollably. She needed to return to the library, search again more carefully. Perhaps it had fallen behind some tall shelf. Perhaps it was hidden in some shadow she had not checked properly in the panic of the night before. Please, please, let it still be there. She dressed in haste with clumsy fingers, nearly tearing the fabric of her simple dress. She practically ran through the still empty corridors of the castle. It was too early for most to be awake. Perfect to turn the library upside down without witnesses. She entered the silent room. The familiar scent of old books and extinguished candles greeted her as always, but this time it brought no comfort. She began to search, under every table, behind every shelf, among forgotten cushions. Every possible and impossible corner. Nothing. No, no, no. Her hands shook violently as she searched the same place for the third, fourth, fifth time, as if the diary might magically appear through sheer force of will. Everything I wrote. About the kingdom. About Theron being a traitor. About the king. About watching him train. About seeing him naked after the transformation. About my wolf howling for him. About imagining things that... The shame burned so fiercely that Fair had to sit down, her legs simply giving out. If someone read it, if it fell into the wrong hands, if Theron discovered the accusations, if the king read the parts about... I am completely ruined. She buried her face in her hands, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to find some impossible solution. Maybe no one would find it. Maybe it had fallen into some dark crevice no one would ever search. Maybe. Feyre remained there, lost in thought, almost crying. Rurik woke that morning, after spending the entire night reading Feyre's diary, with a clarity he had not felt in years. Perhaps he had never felt it at all. The haze Theron had so carefully kept over his eyes had lifted, replaced by crystal-clear sight and controlled fury. He hid the diary in a secret compartment in his chambers, behind a wooden panel only he knew how to open. Then he dressed, straightened his crown, and went out to be the king he had always been. But he was not the same king anymore. In the corridors, he greeted courtiers with the same cordiality as always. In the throne room, he listened to petitions with seemingly detached attention. In council meetings, he nodded at Theron with a neutral expression, the perfect mask. But underneath it, he worked. On the first day, he discreetly summoned a loyal guard who had served his own father for decades. A man he could trust absolutely. "I need you to do something for me," Rurik had said in a low voice, far from prying ears. Go to the southern villages, quietly. Find a woman named Marta. Ask about the grain promised 3 weeks ago. Write down everything she says, and watch the wagons leaving private storehouses. The man did not question him. He simply nodded and left before nightfall. On the second day, Rurik sent another trusted guard, a man old enough to be nearing retirement, owing Theron no favors, to trace financial documents, distribution records, compare what had been approved with what had actually reached its destinations. Look for discrepancies, he had instructed. Account for every coin that does not add up. And while his men worked in the shadows, Rurik began to change his behavior toward Theron. Subtly. Not dramatically. That would alert his uncle immediately. But in small ways. When Theron suggested something, Rurik hesitated one heartbeat longer before agreeing. He asked more specific questions. Why exactly do we need to raise taxes? Show me the figures. He looked more closely. He paid attention to details he had always ignored. And he watched his uncle, truly watched him for the first time. He saw the gleam in Theron's eyes when they discussed financial restructuring. He saw that satisfied smile Fair had described. He saw the way his uncle moved through the castle, with authority he should not have, issuing orders that were not his to give. How did I never see this before? The answer was simple and shameful. Because he had not wanted to see. Because it was easier to trust blindly. Because Theron had always been there, filling the void his father's early death had left behind. But now he saw. And what he saw sickened him. Theron was no fool. Decades of manipulating people had taught him to read subtle signals, nearly imperceptible shifts in behavior. And he was seeing those shifts in Rurik. On the second day, sitting in his private chamber, Theron drummed his fingers on the imported mahogany desk, bought with stolen money his naive nephew had never noticed. Something changed. Rurik was different, more alert, less pliable, asking questions he had never asked before. Is he investigating me? Paranoia, the old companion of anyone who lives by betrayal, began to whisper. Impossible. He is too weak. Too controlled, years of building him into that. But the doubt remained, persistent, corrosive. On the third day, Theron made a decision. He summoned 3 servants he knew were flexible with their loyalties. He offered heavy gold coins. Find out what the king has been doing, he ordered in a soft, dangerous voice. Who he speaks to, what he does, where he goes. Everything. And to one particular servant, a small, discreet man who worked in the royal chambers, he gave an even more specific order. Search his rooms. Look for anything unusual. Letters, documents, anything. The man nodded, his eyes shining with greed. Fair was losing her mind. 3 days, 72 hours, 4,320 minutes of absolute growing panic. She had gone back to the library 6 times on the first day, 8 on the second. Now, on the third, she had lost count of how many times she had entered that cursed room to tear through the same places. It has to be here. It has to be. But it was not. She had checked under every table at least 20 times, behind every shelf until her hands were raw, between every cushion until she had memorized every tear in the old fabric. Nothing. Someone took it. Someone read it. Someone knows. Nights were worse. She lay in the narrow bed, staring at the dark ceiling, imagining increasingly horrible scenarios. Theron reading the accusations and having her arrested for treason. The king reading the humiliating parts and laughing at her with the court. Her father being punished for raising a daughter so reckless. Being thrown out of the castle with nothing. Or worse. She could barely eat. Food turned to ash in her mouth. Her stomach churned constantly, tied into a painful knot. She avoided any part of the castle where she might run into the king. She took longer routes. She hid behind columns when she heard heavy footsteps approaching, because she did not know what she would do if she saw him. If those gray eyes that haunted her dreams found hers. If he knew. He cannot know. He cannot. But the treacherous voice of reason whispered, "What if he already does?" On the third day, Fair was in the library again. It was late morning, most people busy with daily duties. She was alone, as she always had been lately, kneeling on the floor, checking for the 1,000th time beneath the same table where she had been sitting that fateful night. Nothing. Always nothing. Tears burned behind her eyes. Not from sadness, but from furious frustration and fear that ate like acid. I am so stupid. So careless. I wrote all of that and just forgot it. How could I be so? At last I found you. Fair froze. Completely. Every muscle, every nerve, every heartbeat simply stopped. She knew that voice. Deep, resonant. The voice that had made her shake the first time they spoke. No. Slowly, so slowly that every movement hurt, she rose from the floor, turned. And there, filling the library doorway exactly as he had 3 nights before, stood Rurik. But he looked different now. More present. Sharper eyes, straighter posture, as if something inside him had awakened. And the way he looked at her made her heart kick dangerously. "Your Majesty," she managed, her voice coming out surprisingly steady despite her nerves. "I was just reading," he finished, his lips curved faintly. "I like reading too, especially at night, when the castle is quiet." Fair did not know whether he was merely being polite or whether those words carried hidden meaning. "Yes," she agreed carefully. "It is more peaceful." Rurik walked slowly toward the shelves, fingers gliding along the spines. He seemed relaxed, but there was something in the way he moved. Deliberate, measured. "Found anything interesting lately?" he asked without looking at her. Fair's stomach tightened. Was it an innocent question, or did it have a second edge? "No, not really," she replied, trying to keep her voice normal. He picked up a random book and flipped through it. "That is a shame. Sometimes we find unexpected things in the most ordinary places." Unexpected things. Fair felt her face heat. Was he talking about the diary, or only about books? "I suppose so, Your Majesty." Rurik looked at her then, truly looked. His gray eyes studied her with an intensity that made Fair forget how to breathe. "Do you write?" he asked suddenly. Her heart stopped completely. Sometimes," she admitted, her mouth dry. "Nothing important." "I am sure it is more important than you think," he said softly. "Words can reveal a great deal. About the world, about people, about feelings we sometimes keep hidden." He knows. He has to know. But he could also be speaking in general, just making conversation. Fair could not be sure, and the uncertainty was torture. "Your Majesty, I should—" "Honest observations," he interrupted, turning his attention back to the book in his hands, "can be valuable, even when the writer believes no one else will ever see them." Fair's blood turned to ice. He was definitely implying something. But he still was not saying it outright. "Sometimes," she said in a shaky voice, "honesty can be dangerous or necessary." His eyes met hers again. "Especially when it wakes someone up to truths they would rather ignore." They stared at each other. The tension in the air was palpable. Fear, shame, and something deeper Fair could not name. Rurik closed the book slowly and slid it back onto the shelf. Then he took one step toward her. "If you had lost something," he said in a low voice, almost casual, "something personal and important, would you like to know it was in safe hands?" Fair's eyes widened slightly. He has it. He really has the diary. but he still did not say it directly. I suppose so, she managed. He nodded, as if that answered a question he had not asked aloud. Good. Before Fair could process, the door opened abruptly. A guard, breathless, clearly agitated. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but your Uncle Theron requests your presence immediately. He says it is urgent. Something about the council. Rurik closed his eyes for a moment, jaw tightening visibly. When he opened them, frustration was plain. He looked at Fair for a long time. This conversation, he said, his voice heavy with something she could not identify, is not over. Then, to Fair's complete astonishment, tomorrow, will you have tea with me? In the garden. It was not an order, but it was not exactly a casual request either. It was an invitation, leaving her a choice. Fair, confused, shaken, her face burning, heard her own voice. Yes. Something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, perhaps, or relief. Good. And he left quickly with the guard, leaving Fair standing there, completely lost. Did he read it? Did he not? Does he have the diary? Was he only being polite? She did not know, and the uncertainty was killing her. While Fair wrestled with torturous doubts, another drama unfolded in the castle's shadows. The servant Theron had bribed waited patiently until he was absolutely sure the king was occupied. Then he entered the royal chambers with the quick, efficient movements of someone who had done this before. He searched drawers, wardrobes, under the mattress, behind paintings. He was about to give up when he noticed something strange. A wooden panel in the wall near the fireplace seemed slightly misaligned, as if it had been moved recently. He pressed, pushed. It opened. And inside, carefully hidden, was a small diary with a worn brown cover. He picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. The handwriting was delicate, clearly feminine. He saw the name written small in the corner. Fair. He did not recognize it. But Theron had paid for anything unusual in the king's rooms. He tucked the diary beneath his tunic and slipped out through the empty corridors. Theron was in his private chamber reviewing documents when the servant knocked discreetly. Enter. The man stepped in, nervous but excited. I found something in the king's chambers, sir. A diary. Theron looked up, intrigued. The king's? No, sir. A woman's. Fair, it is written. Fair. The name was vaguely familiar. Some maid? Someone's daughter in the castle? Why would the king have a woman's diary hidden away? He murmured, more to himself. But he took the book, dismissing the servant with a few coins. Alone, he opened the first page and began to read. 5 minutes later, Theron was no longer sitting calmly. He was on his feet, the diary clenched in hands that trembled, not with fear, but with barely contained fury mixed with something more dangerous, opportunity. He had read everything, every poisonous word, the accusations about him, traitor, diverted grain, suspicious wagons, Mistress Marta, the gold and ruby ring, details far too specific, far too dangerous. The girl had obviously told the king. How else would Rurik have this diary hidden in a secret compartment? That is why he changed. That is why he is questioning me. That wretched girl. Rage boiled in his veins. But Theron had not gotten where he was by being impulsive. And as he read again, he saw the opportunity shining between the lines of accusation. Because the diary also brutalized the king himself, called him submissive, spoiled, a puppet, spoke of the kingdom's problems, its injustices, conspiracy, disrespect toward the crown. And those parts about watching the king train, seeing him naked, her wolf howling for him, proof of sick obsession. Perhaps even witchcraft. Witches used obsession to control alphas. Everyone knew that. Perfect. Theron sat down again, his mind working at calculated speed. He would make a public announcement. He would search for the diary's owner. He would force Rurik to take action against someone conspiring against the crown. If his nephew tried to defend her, it would prove he was compromised, enchanted. The council would demand action, and Theron would finally have the total control he had always wanted. He smiled. "Thank you, little Fair, for giving me exactly what I needed." The next morning, Fair woke to shouting outside. She sprang up, her heart already racing on pure instinct, and opened the door to her small room. Guards were running through the corridors. Servants whispered nervously in frightened clusters. "What happened?" she asked a cook hurrying past. "A royal announcement, girl. In the main courtyard. Everyone must attend immediately." Fair dressed in haste, trembling fingers fighting the ties of her simple dress, and hurried down the stone stairs. The main courtyard was packed. Guards, servants, courtiers, merchants. All staring at the raised platform where the king normally made proclamations. But it was not the king standing there. It was Theron. Fair's stomach dropped painfully. "Good people of the castle," Theron began, his voice loud and authoritative as it echoed off the stone walls. "I come to you with a matter of extreme gravity that affects the safety of all of us." He held something up high. Small. Brown cover. No. No. Fair's world stopped turning. "This diary," Theron continued, his voice hardening, "was found containing serious and unfounded accusations against the crown. Conspiracy, direct disrespect to His Majesty, deliberate attempts to sow discord and distrust in the realm. My diary. He has my diary." Fair could not breathe, could not move. She could only stand there, frozen, watching her world collapse. "Whoever wrote this," Theron's voice turned to pure threat, "has committed treason against the realm and against our king, and must be punished according to the severity of the crime." Murmurs erupted through the crowd. Fear, curiosity, outrage. "Therefore," he continued, raising his voice over the din, "we seek the owner of this diary, and no one will leave the castle until we discover who is responsible for these slanders against the crown." Fair's legs buckled. She grabbed a stone column to keep from collapsing in front of everyone. How? How did he find it? And then, with painful, inevitable clarity, the only conclusion possible. The king. He showed his uncle. The logic was simple and devastating. Rurik had the diary. He had all but admitted it yesterday in the library. Now Theron had it. Therefore, Rurik had given it to him. Everything in the library, the subtle words loaded with meaning, the invitation to tea, those intense looks, had been a lie. Cruel manipulation. He had read her deepest shames and handed her to his uncle to be destroyed in public. Tears burned behind her eyes, but Fair forced them back with every ounce of strength she had. Not here, not in front of hundreds of people. She turned and ran, ignoring the curious looks that followed her. In the king's chambers, Rurik was dressing carefully for tea with Farah when he heard the shouting from the courtyard. He rushed to the tall window. He saw the gathered crowd. He saw Theron on the raised platform, gesturing dramatically. He saw the diary, that small diary with the worn brown cover, in his uncle's hand. Rurik's blood turned to ice. No. He dressed in seconds. No care now, only speed, and ran through the corridors. He found Theron still in the courtyard, dispersing the crowd with authoritarian orders. "What do you think you are doing?" Rurik snarled, not caring who heard. Fury spilled from every word. Theron turned, and for a fraction of a second genuine surprise crossed his face before it was quickly replaced by carefully constructed false concern. "Nephew, how good you came. We found this diary with absolutely terrible accusations against you and against... Where did you get that?" Rurik's voice was low. Lethal. Dangerous. Theron held the diary with excessive care, meeting Rurik's eyes with perfectly practiced concern. "It was found in the garden," he said in a carefully measured tone. "Apparently someone dropped it. A servant, alarmed by the grave content, naturally brought it to me at once. In the garden." Rurik felt fury flare hotter. His uncle was lying to his face, boldly. Because they both of them knew, that the diary had been hidden in a secret compartment in the king's chambers. Theron had ordered a search, ordered it stolen. But Rurik could not accuse him without admitting he had possessed a diary containing conspiracies against the crown. And Theron could not admit he had searched the royal chambers without orders, without confessing to spying and trespass. So there they stood, staring at each other, both knowing the truth, both unable to say it out loud. A silent, lethal chess match. "In the garden," Rurik repeated, his voice dangerously soft, every word laden with meaning that everyone around them missed, but Theron understood perfectly. "How convenient. Is it not?" Theron smiled. "How fortunate we found it first." "You had no right," Rurik said, taking a threatening step forward, "to make a public announcement without my explicit permission, regardless of where it was found." The emphasis made Theron's eyes narrow briefly. "But surely you see the gravity of what is written here," his uncle argued, changing tactics. "Conspiracy against the crown, accusations against members of the council, direct disrespect to you. I was protecting your interests." Protecting. They both knew it was a lie. "It is a diary," Rurik cut in, his voice echoing through the courtyard. "Personal opinions, private thoughts." "Thoughts that affront the crown," Theron insisted. "That must be punished appropriately." Rurik stepped closer, his eyes flaring gold for a brief second. A tense silence fell between them. Theron retreated slightly. They stared at each other. A silent game. Rurik snatched the diary from his uncle's hands. "I will handle this personally." He turned and left before Theron could argue further. But the damage was already done. Fair had heard the announcement, and she would surely believe he had betrayed her. In her modest room, Fair wept. Not loud sobs, but silent tears that burned, fed by rage, fear, and pain. "Fair?" Marcus entered, deep worry etched into his aged face. "The announcement. That diary. It is mine, father," she managed through tears. "It is mine." She watched his face drain of color. "What did you write, my girl?" "Truths," she cried, her voice breaking. "About Theron stealing from the realm, about manipulating the king, about the grain that never arrives. And..." She stopped, shame blazing. "And personal things, about the king. Things I never should have written." Marcus pulled her into a tight embrace. "How did Theron get it?" he asked gently. And then came the devastating conclusion. The only possible logic. "The king," Fair pulled back, looking at her father with red, desperate eyes as she told him everything. "He found my diary and gave it to his uncle." "You cannot be certain." "I can," she shouted, pain turning into fury. "He read it all and handed me to his uncle like I was nothing, like it was some cruel game." The tears surged again. How was I so stupid? I thought he was different, that he was better than this, but he is just as bad as Theron. Marcus cupped his daughter's face in his calloused hands. "Then we are getting you out of here." "I know every secret passage in this castle," Marcus said with iron determination. 40 years of service taught me things. You have a cousin in the eastern village. We will go to her, only until things cool down. If they find out you helped me, leave that to me," he said firmly. "We will wait until nightfall." Rurik discreetly summoned his trusted guard. "I need you to find someone for me," he said in a low voice. "Fair, daughter of Guard Marcus. Find her before Theron does. Help her hide. Protect her." His wolf was frantic, howling inside him with urgent need. "Your Majesty." The guard hesitated. "Counselor Theron ordered an active search. He wants to find her first." "Then be faster than he is," Rurik said, his eyes flaring gold. "She cannot fall into his hands. Do you understand? Protect her, no matter what it costs." The guard nodded and left quickly. Rurik remained alone, holding the diary. "Please, Feyre. Trust me. Just a little longer." At dusk, Marcus led Feyre through narrow corridors, ancient, forgotten passages built for escapes in times of war. During the shift change, exactly when he knew there would be a 3-minute gap, they slipped out through a hidden side door under creeping vines. Feyre's last sight was the castle towers against the darkening sky. Rurik's trusted guard arrived at Marcus's quarters moments too late. Empty. He ran back to the king, breathless. "Your Majesty." They fled. Marcus and his daughter. Gone. Rurik felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. No. Fair, no. A guard loyal to Theron had come with word of the escape minutes earlier. Theron was furious. Absolutely furious. How? How did she get out? "One of the guards helped her, sir. Marcus." Theron smiled, that dangerous smile. "Arrest Marcus immediately. Treason." Helping a conspirator flee. A calculated pause. "And send guards after the girl. I want her back. Alive." As soon as dawn broke, Feyre was found, in one of the villages she frequented, where she had thought she could find temporary refuge. Theron's guards surrounded her, and dragged her back to the castle like a criminal. Rurik learned from his own guards that Feyre had been captured, and that Marcus was imprisoned in the dungeons, by Theron's order. The fury that exploded inside him was unlike anything he had ever felt. Cold, lethal, controlled. He gathered his personal guard, men loyal only to him. "Get Marcus out of the dungeons, now, and bring Feyre. Put them both in chambers near mine, under my personal protection." The guards rushed to obey. Theron discovered it minutes later. He stormed into the king's chambers without knocking, furious. "What do you think you are doing? This is obstruction of the investigation. I arrested them lawfully." Rurik turned slowly, and for the first time in his life, he let the true Alpha rise fully to the surface. His physical presence had always been imposing, but now there was real power. Authority that did not accept challenge. He stepped toward his uncle. Theron backed up instinctively. "Who is king here?" Rurik's voice was low, soft, absolutely lethal. His eyes burned with intense gold, eyes of the massive black wolf. "You." Theron tried, but the word came out strangled. "Me," Rurik confirmed, taking another step. "So stop acting as if it is you." One more step. Theron hit the wall. "You will do nothing to them," the king said, every word carrying absolute command. "You will not touch them. You will not go near them. Not until I decide what is to be done. Is that clear?" Theron tried to argue, but the power pouring off Rurik was crushing. "Or," the king continued, his voice soft but infinitely threatening, "do I need to remind you who wears the crown here?" "No," Theron managed, humiliation burning in his eyes. "Good. Now leave." Theron walked away from that confrontation shattered, humiliated, and absolutely furious. That girl had changed everything, turned his weak nephew into something dangerous. Theron left that confrontation with his nephew shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so intense he could barely breathe. The king had never spoken to him like that. Never displayed that kind of raw power, that alpha authority that had made Theron instinctively retreat like a cornered animal. The girl. Everything had changed because of her. That insignificant guard's daughter had turned his weak, malleable nephew into something dangerous, into a real king, and that could not be allowed to continue. Theron locked himself in his chamber, his mind working with the calculated precision of decades spent manipulating people and situations. The original plan, to use the diary to incriminate her, to force Rurik to punish her, had failed. The king had protected her, placed her under his personal guard, openly defying Theron. But there were other ways, more subtle ways, more lethal ways. He had already planted the seed when he read the diary. Those passages about obsession, about her wolf howling for him, proved witchcraft. Now he merely needed to water that seed with carefully cultivated rumors. And if that was not enough, well, poisons were difficult to trace, and a dead king could not protect anyone. Theron worked with the silent efficiency of a serpent. He sought out specific members of the council, the older ones, the more traditional, the more superstitious. Men who valued bloodlines and distrusted anything that smelled of magic. "Have you noticed how our king has been different?" Theron whispered in private conversations, his tone heavy with false concern. "Since that girl appeared." "Different how?" the counselor would ask. "Obsessive." Theron let the word hang in the air. He never showed interest in any woman. Years of refusing noblewomen of impeccable lineage. And suddenly, some guard's daughter with no name, no standing, and he protects her as if... A calculated pause. As if he had no choice. He watched understanding and suspicion grow in the other man's eyes. "You are suggesting..." "I am suggesting nothing." Theron raised his hands in feigned innocence. "Only observing facts." His behavior changed radically. He confronted me because of her. And that diary. He did not need to say more. The seed was planted. He repeated variations of this conversation with 5 influential council members over the course of 2 days. Always careful, always insinuating, never accusing outright. And he watched as distrust spread like a silent disease among the counselors. Rurik knew Theron was plotting something. He could feel it in the looks the council members gave him, cautious, almost fearful, in conversations that stopped abruptly when he approached. But he had more urgent concerns. Feyre. She was only a few chambers away, under his protection, yet might as well have been on the far side of the kingdom for the emotional distance between them. His wolf was restless, howling constantly. Go to her. Explain. Make her understand. She is ours. For 2 days, Rurik hesitated, gathering courage, rehearsing words, trying to find the right way to explain. But in the end, he knew there was no right way, only the truth. On the 3rd day, he knocked on her door. Feyre was sitting near the window when she heard the knock. Her heart leapt immediately. In recent days, she had been confined to that luxurious room, far more luxurious than anywhere she had ever lived, yet still a gilded prison. Her father was in adjacent chambers, equally protected. Or watched. She no longer knew which. Guards loyal to the king brought food, made sure she had everything she needed. But no one explained anything. No one said what would happen next. "Come in," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. The door opened, and there he was. Rurik filled the doorway exactly as he had in the library. Tall, imposing, impossible to ignore. But there was something different in his expression now. Something vulnerable she had never seen before. "Your Majesty." Feyre rose quickly, keeping her distance. She did not know whether to feel anger, shame, or fear. Perhaps all 3. "Feyre," he said softly, closing the door behind him. "We need to talk." She did not respond. She simply stood there, arms crossed defensively over her chest. Rurik took a few steps into the room, then stopped when he saw her stiffen. "First," he began, his voice laden with emotion he seemed to be struggling to control. "I need you to know the truth. About the diary." Feyre felt her face flush immediately with shame. "I was not the one who showed it to Theron," Rurik continued, his eyes meeting hers with intensity. "He ordered my chambers searched. He stole the diary from a secret compartment." She blinked, processing. "I would never betray you like that," he said, taking another careful step. "When I read your words, yes, I read them, and I know I should not have, but I did. I was changed by them. I did not want to hurt you. I wanted to protect you." Something tightened painfully in Feyre's chest. "Then how did Theron?" "He suspected I was investigating him," Rurik explained. "He sent spies everywhere. They found the diary hidden and took it to him." It made sense. Terrible, logical sense. "I am sorry," Rurik said, and there was genuine pain in his voice. "I am sorry for letting things reach this point, for not protecting you better, for not seeing what Theron was sooner. The fault is mine." Silence fell between them. Heavy, but not uncomfortable. Feyre did not know what to say. All the furious words she had practiced over the past days died in her throat. Because he seemed sincere, truly remorseful. "The things you wrote in the diary," Rurik continued after a moment, his voice lower now, almost hesitant. "About me, about feelings, were they real?" Feyre's face burned so fiercely she was certain she was red to the roots of her hair. All those shameful confessions. Watching him train, seeing him naked, imagining things, her wolf howling for him, and he was asking if they were real. "They are just..." Her voice came out hoarse. She cleared her throat. "Foolish things, Your Majesty. Silly fantasies of a girl who does not know her place." She saw something change in his expression. His eyes lost some of their light. His jaw tightened. "What a shame," he said softly, with genuine sadness that made her chest ache. "Because I very much wish they were true." And before Feyre could process it, before she could respond, he turned and left. The door closed with a soft sound. Feyre stood there, staring at the wooden door, completely lost. He wished they were true? What does that mean? She sank slowly into the chair by the window, her mind spinning in confused circles. Rurik left Feyre's chambers with a heart heavy as stone. She had denied it, said they were foolish fantasies. His wolf howled in pain inside him. No, she is ours. She feels it too. We know she does. But if she did not want to admit it, if she was too ashamed or too afraid, Rurik would not force her. He would never do that. But he could do one thing. Something he should have done long ago. Free the kingdom from the man who had poisoned it for years. In the days that followed, Rurik worked methodically. He gathered all the guards he had sent to investigate, compiled every report, every testimony, every document. Mistress Marta from the southern villages confirmed everything. The grain never arrived. Other families as well. Names, dates, promised quantities versus what they actually received. The guards traced the wagons, followed them to the port, found merchants willing to testify, for a price, of course, but testify nonetheless. Theron had been selling the kingdom's resources for personal profit. Financial records showed glaring discrepancies. Funds approved versus funds distributed. The difference always vanishing into administrative costs overseen by Theron. Letters, compromising correspondence, plans to eventually assume more power, perhaps even the throne. It was all there. Years of systemic betrayal documented in irrefutable detail. And Rurik had obtained it all because Feyre had given him the right places to look, thanks to her diary. The right people to question. Without her, he would have remained blind. He convened a formal session of the full council. All members. Without exception. Theron arrived confident, that satisfied smile on his lips. Clearly he believed his rumors had worked, that the council stood with him. Rurik waited until everyone was seated. Then he began. "Members of the council," he said, his voice resonating through the chamber with an authority he had never used before. "I have called this session to present evidence of treason against the crown." Murmurs erupted. Theron kept his expression neutral, but Rurik saw his eyes narrow slightly. "For weeks," Rurik continued, "I received information through an unexpected source, a diary, written by someone who observed the realm with eyes sharper than my own." He paused, letting the words linger. That diary contained specific observations about diverted resources, grain that never reached the villages, supplies that disappeared, and it pointed to one person, my uncle, Theron. "This is absurd." Theron stood. "That diary is full of lies, of conspiracies against you." "Sit down," Rurik ordered, his voice cutting like a blade. His eyes flashed gold briefly. Theron sat slowly, something faltering in his confidence. "I could have ignored it," Rurik continued calmly. "I could have dismissed it. But something told me to investigate, to truly see for the first time." He gestured to the guards, who began distributing documents to each council member. "Here are the results of that investigation. Testimonies from residents of the southern villages about grain that never arrived. Records of wagons leaving Theron's private storehouses. Evidence of those resources being sold to merchants at the port." Another gesture. "More documents. Here are comparisons between resources approved by me and resources actually distributed. The discrepancies are significant." Theron was pale now. "And here," Rurik placed a stack of letters on the table. "Correspondence, plans, discussions about expanding influence, about eventually assuming greater control of the crown." Absolute silence fell over the chamber. "All of this," Rurik said, his voice low but lethal, "I obtained in less than a week. Even with my uncle's spies everywhere, even with him trying to manipulate me for years, because someone finally showed me where to look." He looked directly at Theron. "The girl you tried to destroy saved me, saved this kingdom, with her honest, courageous observations." One of the oldest counselors cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, this evidence is extensive." "It is irrefutable," Rurik corrected. "This is a lie." Theron finally exploded. "You are enchanted by her. Can you not see? She used witchcraft, magic to control you. That is why you act so differently, so— Enough!" The word thundered through the chamber. Rurik rose, and alpha power radiated from him in waves. Everyone felt it, the pressure in the air, the weight of true authority. "For years," he said, his voice low but heavy with power, "you manipulated me, made me doubt my own instincts, controlled me like a puppet. And when I finally woke, when I finally saw the truth, you accused me of being enchanted?" He took a step toward his uncle. "The only witchcraft here was yours. Years of poisoning my mind against trusting myself." His eyes glowed fully gold now. "Theron," Rurik said, and there was finality in the name. "You are found guilty of high treason, of conspiracy against the crown, of systematic theft of the realm's resources, of manipulation and abuse of power." The entire chamber held its breath. "And as king," Rurik continued, his voice ringing with absolute command, "exercising full authority as alpha of this realm, I banish you, forever. You have until dawn to leave these lands. If you are found here after sunrise, you will be executed for treason." Theron was livid, shaking with impotent fury. "You will regret this," he hissed. "When that witch destroys you, when— Guards." Rurik did not look at him. "Escort him out. Ensure he is beyond the borders before dawn." 2 loyal guards seized Theron by the arms. He struggled, shouting accusations and threats, but was dragged out nonetheless. The doors closed, silencing his screams. Rurik turned to the council. "As for the young woman Feyre and her father Marcus," he said calmly, "they are fully absolved of any accusation." The diary contained honest personal opinions, not conspiracy. And thanks to those observations, we uncovered real treason. He looked at each council member. "Does anyone object?" Silence. No hands were raised. "Good. This session is adjourned." Feyre learned from the guards that Theron had been banished, that she and her father were completely free, that it was over. She sank heavily onto the bed, trying to process it. It was over. Truly over. She should have felt relief. And she did. But there was something else, too. Something confusing and complicated. A few days passed. Feyre remained in the castle. The king insisted on keeping her, and her father, for safety, and, though he did not say it aloud, for convenience as well. Rurik was busier than ever. He reorganized the council, secured fragile alliances, corrected courses that had been neglected for far too long. Even so, amid the decisions of the realm, he began to ask for Feyre's opinion, always with respect, always as king, never as anything more than that. For Feyre, however, every meeting was a silent battle. Her heart rebelled every time she saw him. The bond, contained, pulsed like a low, insistent flame, demanding more than she was ready to give. Until a soft knock at the door made her rise. "Come in." It was a guard. "Miss Feyre," he said respectfully, "the king requests your presence, in the gardens, if you are willing." Feyre hesitated only a moment. "I will be there shortly." The garden was bathed in the soft light of afternoon. The scent of flowers filled the air, jasmine, roses, lavender. Feyre walked slowly along the stone path, her heart racing with every step. And then she saw him. Rurik stood near the central fountain, watching the water. Tall, strong. But there was something different about him now. Something lighter, as if an ancient weight had finally been lifted from his shoulders. He turned when he heard her approach, and smiled. Small, restrained, but genuine. "Feyre," he said softly. "Thank you for coming." "And by the way," he continued, "you were right, you know, about everything you wrote. I wasted my strength, ignored the people, let Theron manipulate me. But you woke me." He took another step. "I want to thank you. Publicly, before the court I already did, but I wanted to thank you here as well, personally." "You do not need to." "I do," he interrupted gently, "because there is something else I need to tell you." Feyre's heart raced. Rurik took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I spent years," he began, his voice laden with emotion, "refusing to choose a queen. The council pressured me constantly, presented candidates of noble lineage, organized elaborate dinners, and I always said, 'Later, when the realm is stable, when I have solved the problems.'" He laughed without humor. "I thought marriage was a distraction from what truly mattered, ruling well. That choosing a companion was secondary, frivolous." He took another step, standing very close now. "But the realm never improved, and I did not understand why, until I read your words." His eyes met hers with an intensity that stole the air from Feyre's lungs. "You see, Feyre. You see what I refused to see. You see the people, the real problems, the true solutions. You would not be a distraction from the realm. You would be the partner I needed and never knew how to seek." His voice grew softer, more intimate. "I never thought I would want a woman to love me this much. I never felt it before. For anyone. But you..." He stopped, the intensity in his eyes making Fair tremble. I fell in love with the things you wrote, with your brutal honesty that woke me, with your sharp intelligence that saw through lies, with your genuine humility, even while possessing more wisdom than my entire court. Rurik took the final step, so close that Feyre could feel his warmth. You see the world, see people, in a way I never could. You would make the realm better. You would make me better. His voice dropped to a whisper. I went mad for you, Feyre, my wolf and I. Since that night in the library, something changed, and the more I came to know you through your words, the more certain I became. He took her hand gently. My wolf recognized you, and that certainty grew with every moment. With every word of yours I read, with every thought of you, my wolf became more sure. His eyes flashed gold briefly. And now I have no doubts. You are my destined mate. Feyre's eyes widened, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain he could hear it. Your diary told me a secret, Rurik smiled faintly. Your wolf knew too, did it not? Even as you fought it, it howled for me. She blushed deeply, unable to deny it. It was true. Fair, he said softly. These days I tried to occupy my mind with the realm, with duties, with decisions. He looked at her with raw honesty. But I could not stop thinking about you. I need to know if it is real. So I will ask again. And please, please be honest with me. He held her face between his hands with infinite care. The feelings you wrote about, are they real? Tears burned behind Feyre's eyes, and this time, she did not lie. Yes, she whispered. They always were. I have always been in love with you, not only with the handsome man I watched train from afar, but with what you could be, with what I saw existed in you, hidden beneath manipulation. The tears finally fell. But you are the king, and I am just Feyre, a guard's daughter, nothing more than that. You are everything, Rurik said with fierce intensity. Everything I need, everything the realm needs. And then he asked, shall we finally have that tea I promised? Feyre laughed through her tears and nodded. They sat at a small table in the garden. Tea was served by discreet servants who soon vanished, leaving them alone. They talked. Truly talked. For the first time without secrets, without misunderstandings, without masks. Just Rurik and Feyre. He spoke of growing up under Theron's shadow, always doubting himself. Of never feeling attraction to anyone until her. She spoke of growing up without a mother, of observing the realm and seeing injustice. Of fighting her own wolf that insisted on recognizing something in him. And the more they talked, the closer they became. Chairs drawing nearer almost imperceptibly. Hands touching across the table. First by accident, then deliberately, fingers intertwining. Rurik could barely focus on what she was saying. His eyes kept drifting to her mouth. The way her lips moved, how she bit her lower lip when she hesitated, how she smiled when she spoke of something that amused her. She is beautiful, as I have never seen before, until there was no space left between them. Feyre was in the middle of a sentence, something about the village, about Mistress Marta, when she realized Rurik was no longer listening. He was staring at her mouth with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. His eyes darkened, gray turning nearly black with only a golden ring around them. And then, without asking permission, without warning, he simply leaned in and kissed her. Stole the kiss, as if it had always belonged to him. For a fraction of a second, Feyre froze in surprise. Then she melted. His lips were softer than she had imagined. Warmer. More perfect. The kiss began almost gentle, as if he were holding back. But when Feyre responded, when her hands moved instinctively to his chest, something broke completely. Rurik deepened the kiss with a low groan, one hand sliding to the back of her neck, fingers burying in her hair. The other hand settled at her waist, pulling her closer. Fair did not think. She simply felt. Years of watching him from afar. Years of denying what she felt. Years of fighting her own wolf that insisted on recognizing him. All of it exploded in that kiss. Her hand slid up his chest, feeling the defined muscles beneath his clothes, to his shoulders, then his neck, pulling him even closer. It was not enough. It would never be enough. When they finally parted, only because they needed air, both were trembling. Rurik rested his forehead against hers, eyes still closed, breath uneven. "I am sorry," he said hoarsely. "I did not ask permission. But you were speaking and I could only look at your mouth and—" "Do not apologize," Fair interrupted, equally breathless. "Never apologize for that." He opened his eyes and met hers. And what Fair saw there, desire, yes, but also love, adoration, certainty, made her heart overflow. "Fair," he said, his voice rough with emotion. He stopped, took a deep breath. Then he stepped back slightly, rising from his chair. And to Fair's complete astonishment, he knelt, there, in the garden. The Alpha King, tall, strong, powerful, kneeling in the grass before her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. He drew a ring from his pocket, simple, elegant, perfect. "I know this seems mad," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "Rushed. Too fast. I have barely known you for weeks, and here I am, on my knees, asking for your hand." He held her hand between his, as if it were something fragile and priceless. "But Fair, I have never been certain of anything in my life as I am of you. Of us. I have never felt this. Never known what it was to have absolute certainty about another person." His eyes shone, golden. "I spent my entire life thinking I did not need anyone. That a queen would be only an obligation." His voice grew more intense. "And then I met you, read your words, saw the world through your eyes, and I realized I was completely wrong. Because you are everything I did not know I needed. Everything the realm needs. Everything I need to be the man, the king, I was always meant to be." He squeezed her hand more tightly. "I do not care about lineage. I do not care what the council thinks. I will not, imagine anyone by my side but you. When I try to picture the future, you are there. Always. In every vision, every plan, every dream." A tear finally slipped free, trailing down his cheek. "And I know this seems rushed. I know I should wait, get to know you better, court you properly. But Fair," his voice broke slightly, "I love you. I love you in a way I have never loved anyone. I did not even know I could love like this. Beyond my father, I have never loved anyone in my life. And now I cannot imagine a day without you. I cannot imagine not loving you." He cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb wiping away a falling tear. "I know I love you. I am absolutely certain of it. And I know, with every fiber of my being, with every beat of my heart, with every breath, that I will never stop. I will never stop loving you. Not in 100 years, not in 1,000, not when we are old and gray. Never." He lifted the ring, holding it between them. "So, yes, this is too fast by any normal measure. But there is nothing normal about what I feel for you, about what we are together." He smiled through his tears. "Proposing to the woman who called me a spoiled puppet in her diary. A woman who saw all my flaws and still her wolf howled for me. He was vulnerable in a way kings never should be. I want to marry you, Fair. I want to claim you as my Luna before the entire realm. I want you to be my queen, my counselor, my partner in absolutely everything. His eyes burned intensely now, wolf gold mixed with overwhelming human emotion. I want to run with you beneath the moon as wolves. I want to rule beside you as equals. I want to wake every day seeing the world through your eyes, learning to be better because you show me how. I want to build the realm you always knew we could have. Together. He held her hand, the ring ready. I want to spend every day of the rest of my life loving you, protecting you, honoring you, being worthy of you. His voice dropped to a fierce whisper. So fair, daughter of Marcus, the woman who saved me without even realizing it. The woman my wolf recognized before I understood what was happening. The woman I love more than I ever thought possible to love anyone. He stopped, his eyes locking onto hers with absolute intensity. Will you marry me? Fair could not stop crying. Tears streamed freely down her face, but they were tears of happiness so pure it hurt. Yes, she managed, her voice trembling but firm. Yes. Always yes. She paused, laughing through her tears. Yes, Rurik, I will marry you. Rurik smiled, understanding, and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. And then it happened. The moment the ring touched her skin, the moment she said yes with her whole heart, something changed. Both their eyes flared gold. Simultaneously, intense, absolute, unmistakable. Fair felt as if something inside her, something that had always been waiting, searching, finally clicked into place, like two pieces of a puzzle fitting perfectly together. The bond. It was no longer growing attraction or gradual recognition. It was absolute certainty. Her wolf howled inside her, not with restlessness, but with pure joy. My mate, my alpha, mine alone. And she knew with every fiber of her being, that Rurik's wolf answered the same way. She could feel it, the connection between them like a strong golden thread. She could feel his emotions, love, joy, relief, protective possessiveness, and he could feel hers. They stood there, gazing at one another with eyes glowing gold in the afternoon light, the soul bond finally, completely sealed. My Luna, Rurik whispered, his voice filled with reverence. My Alpha, Fairy replied, and then he pulled her into another kiss, deeper, more intense, sealing with their lips what the bond had already sealed in their souls. Under the golden light of the setting sun, witnessed only by flowers and sky, something new began. A king who finally saw his realm. A Luna who had always seen the truth. And a love that was, at last, inevitable. Epilogue. That night, two wolves ran through the forest of the realm. One immense black wolf, powerful alpha, just as large and magnificent as Fair had always watched from afar, hidden in her tower. Beside him, a smaller but equally fierce she-wolf, finally running free at his side. They ran side by side beneath the full moon, free, wild, complete. And Fair remembered the words she had written in that diary. Confused, frustrated words, filled with a desire she did not understand. And when he turns into a wolf, something in me, my own wolf, wants to draw close, wants to touch that black fur, wants to run at his side. Now she ran. Not watching from afar with a broken heart, not fighting what she felt, but free, at his side, as it was always meant to be. The black wolf turned his head, golden eyes meeting hers for a moment. And even in animal form she could feel through the bond. Love, joy, wholeness. He slowed, waiting for her to catch up, then touched his muzzle to hers. A gentle, intimate gesture. My Luna, my mate. She answered by brushing against the black fur she had always wanted to touch, running circles around him in pure joy. And Feyre, running beside her alpha, finally understood why her wolf had always howled for him. It was not weakness. It was not betrayal of her rational mind. It was recognition. Inevitable. Destined. True. Some bonds are written in the stars long before they are understood. Some loves begin as irritation because they are too powerful to be denied. And some queens are born not of noble bloodlines, but of hearts brave enough to write the truth, even when no one else dares to see it. Beneath the moon that witnessed their bond, beneath the stars shining over the realm they now protected together, two wolves ran. And the kingdom, at last, was at peace.